Now, Dylan and I are in one of our late season food source spots, and I'll talk about this a little bit, but I want to talk about late season hunting. And what's really cool is Dylan and I have actually, this is our 7th year hunting together, and so this is our first sit of our 7th season on this late season food source. And this food source has provided a lot of memories from shooting does when the herd is a little bit high and the numbers are high. But then also, every year we've been able to take at least one mature buck off of here, and sometimes two. So this starts it. Had a lot of great memories. The 4th day of the season, the 7th day, the 9th day. Then that's the end of Wisconsin's gone, and then we have into the muzzleloader too, where we have the muzzleloader season. And last year shot a beautiful buck with a muzzleloader here at about 195 yards. And, I want to talk about late season food sources. That, in this case, we're hunting a food plot. But late season food source for you could be a clear cut on public land. It could be a diversity of habitat change on public land, meaning hardwoods, meeting a swamp edge, old woods, young woods, upland cover on public land. So you're looking for the more stem count per acre typically is better on public land for you. But we're looking for that change in diversity, and that's going to be where deer gravitate to, because on public land there isn't a huge abundance of change. And so when you get change in public land, especially federal land, where you can find old timber, old trees, when you find that change, that's where you often find the deer, especially in the late season, especially if it's remote and hasn't been pressured. Which leads into when it's remote and hasn't been pressured, here we don't expect those woods to be pressured up there. This food source, whether you're hunting that type of food source on public land or we're hunting something like this on private land, represents the anchor of deer movement for the entire daylight period. Deer feed 5 times in a 24-hour period. I had someone on YouTube make a comment. People throw all kinds of comments out there, and you can tell they've heard it from their uncle, their buddy, whatever. And they'll say something like, well, deer don't have a clock. They can move whenever. That's wrong. Deer feed 5 times in a 24-hour period. They're rhythmic pattern feeders, just like a baby. That's like saying a baby doesn't have a clock of feeding. No, they do about every hour or two. And when they're young, and then that progresses to when they're a little bit older, and then all of a sudden they make it through the night 8 or 9 hours, 10 hours, 11 hours, and then they're feeding all day. And deer, on the other hand, are rhythmic pattern feeders, and they're doing it all in a 24-hour period. So they have some peaks and valleys there. If they feed a lot one feeding, like at night, then they'll feed a little bit less the next. But bottom line is, they can, like clockwork, be here about an hour, 45 minutes before dark. That's why I'm talking right now, and I won't be in about an hour. The bottom line is, this represents the bottom of the funnel of daylight movement, meaning they're up in their bedding areas, and they can't wait to come down here and hit this food source because they're eating hardwood regeneration, shrub tips, briars. You'll have to excuse me for looking around for deer. But we can see a long ways up there with fresh snow on the ground, and I want to make sure I don't spook anything when it comes down. But this represents that bottom of the funnel of daylight movement. What does that mean? That means it supplies movement to these bedding areas up there. It means during the second rut, the primary rut, maybe even a chance in early season, we're looking at those bedding areas are full because we don't spook out this food source, because we have this food source here. We spook out this food source here, then why are those deer going to be in that bedding area up there? They're not going to be. And when I say the bottom of the funnel of daylight movement, that means we could have deer, bucks, does, whatever, coming from multiple bedding areas down to this food source every single day, and that's going to provide consistent movement for the entire season, let alone the late season. When it gets into the late season, so we have this as an anchor. That anchor sets up morning hunting during the second rut, during the primary rut. It sets up afternoon movement all season long. Make sure we have bedding areas up there. But it also gives us that opportunity to sneak in here on an unpressured food source during the late season at a time when there's not a lot of food. Hunters have overpressured the woods, gone through gun season in this case here, the rut hunting. A lot of people have been out in the woods around. And so we have this untapped, unpressured food source that we haven't hunted. We never even bow hunt these food sources because if we do, we can't get in and out. We can get right here, we come up a hill on the backside, we can get into the blind without spooking deer. And that's why our shots are between 140 at the back of this food plot, probably about 80 at the front, 212 at the back of that one. It's 235 to that one over there. So I'm sitting here with the muzzleloader. I enjoy hunting. It was 195 yards last year with a really nice buck. But we expect to come in here and hunt unpressured deer. And that's critical because if we have unpressured deer here, they're coming from unpressured bedding areas up there. And now it gives us that entire system of a hunt. We can hunt morning for primary rut and second rut. Second rut will be early December here. And then we can hunt afternoon, evenings down here in the late season with a gun, muzzleloader in this case. And then we can also hunt the movements on the side as deer are coming down into this in the afternoon. So we can get into a safe area away from bedding areas, and we can allow those deer to transition by us and get into this food source. So this food source is critical for the area. How we're hunting it, we make sure no matter where we sit around here, because I've sat up on that hill, there's a red cedar, I've sat it by several times and shot deer. We sit right here, so if we have winds going back that way, I'll sit over there. We can't hunt with our wind going there. The bottom line is, with this late season food source, which is really critical to you, is you don't spook out the food source. Because we're spooking out the food source here, we don't have those bedding areas up there, and there's no deer in those bedding areas. And we can even take a chance up there. If we happen to spook a deer out of the bedding area, then he could just move 200 yards over and bed another spot. And that's why I talk about a funnel, meaning deer coming from several bedding areas. Now, if we only have one bedding area we're coming from, we spook out that, then we're in trouble down here too. But the majority of the time, deer have choices, especially when it comes to mature bucks. They're probably not going to be here if does are taking up the only bedding area. They're probably not here. So when I say funnel, they have that ability to slot over to another bedding area and still come to this food source. When we're coming in here and hunting, I'm looking for weather change. It could be bitter cold, windy, snowy, and then all of a sudden it breaks a little bit, even gets a little bit warmer. They're going to be out here. It could be unseasonably warm weather. We've hunted out here when the previous days have been 60 degrees in November, 55 degrees in December, and all of a sudden it's 32. And we got a little snow on the ground. Those deer just come to life. And when you get a pocket of does coming in here, and it's the late season, secondary rut in early December, in our case around here, if you're further south, like Missouri, Arkansas, Tennessee, West Virginia, over into Oklahoma, that might be more mid-December, third week of December. Then, in this case, we come into an unsuspecting herd. We come into a weather change. We come into a pocket of does. We don't know what buck's going to show up. We could have a buck show up from a mile away, mile and a half away, because they're not finding good late-season food sources that aren't unpressured. They're not finding areas that combine good cover with good food source that hasn't been unpressured. And so they move around a lot. Now those does, they can take a little bit of pressure. We can push them around a little bit. But they even have their point of tolerance where they'll take off and leave, won't come back. But those bucks are not tolerant in any way. And they're willing to travel. They have 5 times the home range as doe family groups. So we're looking for the big 8-point to come in. I know he's still alive. I know that because, well, I messed up on him 3 times last week up with a bow. I missed him because I hit a branch. I had some eye surgery, not terrible, but a needle in my eye, which wasn't fun. The next day, I went out, had a patch on my left eye hunting, and he ended up walking right behind me at 5 yards. I was 200 yards away from where I missed him, maybe 300, 250. And I couldn't tell it was him because I couldn't see him coming from my left eye. Wasn't sure. I should have just stood up, pulled back, and got ready, or at least been ready to pull back. And by the time he went by and got into some brush, I realized it was him. He's a beautiful 6-year-old. Got a sticker on his 1G2. I wounded him 2 years ago when I had a bunch of mishaps in 2020. And then, so that was one time I messed up on him. Can kind of blame the eye on that. And then when I was getting out of a stand, I told myself I'd sit till 10:30. And sat till about 10:45, and I thought, man, I wonder if I should sit till 11. Well, I got out, I went around the bedding area, tried to take a path of least resistance and get out of there, and who happened to be coming right at me, spooked him at 10 yards. He ran by the trail camera, got his picture taken on the Exodus, and it was him, and spooked him at like 10 yards. So pretty bummed last week during the rut. So I'm hoping a little redemption. You know, like I said, I wounded him 2 years ago. He's a beautiful 6-year-old giant. And I'm hoping to see him. I understand there's other hunters around here, and it might not be the case, but boy, it'd be a wonderful redemption if I happen to run into him, the big 8, and we'll see. But bottom line is, if I spook out this food source, there's no big 8 to hunt. And there's no big other buck that's going to come in here. If the deer in this area recognize this as a spot that they shouldn't come into until after dark, hunt these late season food sources. Doesn't matter if it's a clear cut on public land or a food plot on private land. Learn to find these. Could be even a standing ag field. Learn to protect them. We have to get in and out of this stand without spooking deer. A lot of people think, well, we need to get into here without spooking deer. But it's just important to get out because we're worried about the future hunts and spooking deer that are coming into here. So it's getting to that time where I'm worried about deer potentially stepping into here and listening to me talk. So we better get going. Right, Dylan? Dylan's watching. Let's hunt. Yeah, let's hunt. So hunting a late season food source, the setup is incredible. Offers an incredible amount of opportunity. Again, evenings when it's not during the rut, morning bedding area, and then flipping down here. We don't want to destroy that movement so we can get into those bedding areas safely. But it's where dreams are made of. We've shot a lot of nice bucks throughout the years here. Like I said, a mature buck every single year, sometimes multiple ones. If you're wondering about when the best time is to hunt these food sources, the weather can guide you to success. A lot of people can slip out of work just for a couple-hour hunt in the afternoon. We try to sit for at least 2.5 hours. They're usually coming in the last hour. But check out HuntWise, 25% off. Links in the description. That's a savings I can pass off to you guys, and I appreciate you watching this long. Again, we're selling switchgrass seed. You can see we have about 7-foot high switchgrass seed growing right outside the redneck here. We had to mow down to get some shots here, but enjoy hunting these late season food sources. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoy it. I appreciate being able to spend a 7th year now sitting out here watching these fields with Dylan. Hope you guys have great success. Let me know about it in the comments below, and make sure you subscribe if you haven't already done so. We kick out 4 videos a week. We haven't missed one since 2019, and I really hope you enjoy them.
I urge everyone out there to really check out my web classes. They've been wildly successful. We have one that details how you should design your land, another one that details how you should plant and maintain and manage a food plot program. How can you make those decisions that fit your land specifically and not someone else's? Unfortunately, there's so much information in the hunting industry that says you should do this, but it doesn't apply to you. These web classes directly apply to you. And then we have our 3rd web class that came out last year, Rut Web Class, navigating the entire rut. And then we have our 4th one coming out, which is hunting hills and thermals. I urge you to check those out, try the web classes, and they're all about teaching, helping you understand how you can navigate, not only managing your property, food plots, and the rut, but also hunting strategically, hills, thermals, and wherever you pursue whitetails for your dream and your passion.